Welcome to Sisters in Arms. My name is Carrie Ann Auclair.
And I'm Renee Gagney, and together we serve as a Second Amendment resource, providing education and awareness for our communities.
Today's episode, we are talking to Joe Eaton from Faster Saves Lives. He's the program director.
But before that, we have a nice little video to discuss what Faster Saves Lives is, and it's brought to you by the president, Jim Irvine.
Hi, my name's Jim Irvine, and I'd like to talk to you about how and why FASTER saves lives. FASTER is an acronym that stands for Faculty and Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. It's designed for our school staff and administrators to deal with active killers. It involves having a firearm in the schools by trained staff and medical supplies to treat injuries. Now, we all know that FASTER responses save lives. We see it every day. Heart attack victims, stroke victims, whether it's a car accident or a drowning or any sort of injury, the faster we treat that person, the more likely they are to make a full recovery. So this is a normal concept. Now we're just applying it in a different way. Let's talk about in the aftermath of a killing. We've got maybe dozens of injured kids that are bleeding from gunshot wounds. But most people shot survive those if we just get treatment. Now, our police may not have been there when we wanted them, but trust me, they're on their way. Our medical staff in most communities, however, in a different situation. They're responding not to the scene, but staging in a safe location. And they can't come in until law enforcement has declared the scene safe. That can take 30 minutes or even upwards of an hour. In the meantime, your staff can die from the blood loss. So what we need is an adequate and appropriate way to stop that bleeding. That's done through a program the military calls it TC3, or Tactical Combat Casualty Care. At its heart, what we're doing is stopping the bleeding and making sure they can breathe. We do that with compression bandages, tourniquets, and chest seals. This is an important part of our FASTER training, and we get those supplies into the schools so that they can treat them. This is something I think everybody can agree that schools need. Now, at their heart, these killers are generally cowards, and there's lots of ways to stop them, and a lot of ways that have been successful. But we don't want ways that work some of the time or most of the time. We want the most reliable. Law enforcement uses firepower to stop an active killer because that has been shown to be the best and most reliable way. And citizens do it in other places too. It's worked wonderfully throughout our country for decades. We're now simply applying that in our schools. But to make it safer, we're adding additional training to your school staff so that they can better understand active killers and more accurately and appropriately respond to and stop that threat. Stop that killer as quick as we can. Once that killer is stopped and the scene is secure, now immediately transfer to medical treatment of our injured, our staff and our students, and get them treated. As they're doing that, our first responders will be showing up. We can transfer the scene to law enforcement. They can declare the scene cold, and we can start transferring our live patients to our medical responders. We can work together, and then our staff can hug our children and return them to our parents. That's what this program is designed to help you and the school administration do. Stop the killing, treat the injured, save our children, comfort them, and then return them back home like you do every other day. We appreciate the love and the respect and the time and care you give our students every day. Thank you. We appreciate your help, and we look forward to working with you in your school districts.
Thank you, Joe, for joining us. Greatly appreciate you being here today. We just played a quick video from Jim kind of explaining what Faster Saves Lives is, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with Faster?
Certainly. I'm Joe Eaton. I currently volunteer as the program director for the Faster Saves Lives program, and that's a program ran by the nonprofit Buckeye Firearms Foundation based here in Ohio that for 10 years now we've been providing effective response to active killer events to any school staff that wish to get the training. It includes firearms, general crisis and emergency management type of training, trauma medical training, and to date we've trained well over 3,000 school staff from about 300 different districts across, I believe it's 22 or 23 states now. So a lot of demand out there, and we're happy to help schools however we can.
That's awesome.
So Joe, what would you say? I know a lot of schools have implemented Alice. What is different about Faster that makes it more advantageous to the people in the school?
Well, I don't know if I would say more advantageous. It simply is just one additional layer that schools can choose to include in their safety and security programs. There's lots of things that schools have to do ahead of time, such as the single points of entry, the sign in, the sign out, automatic locking doors. Most of them, are monitoring social media. They're training their staff to look for changes in behavior, personality, and these are all things how we can detect these things ahead of time. Then you get into what you can do to detect or to defer them, and then how do you deter them? Well, the signage, the education of people that they are not going to have a successful event should they choose a certain school which has trained staff in it. And then you get to actually how you defend this staff. Alice is one important part of it, because there's a lot of staff who would never want to be included in a program that includes firearms, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But the one thing I can say for certain, because we see it every time one of these events happens, is every school building in these United States, there's at least one person who, no matter what the school has trained them or what they've threatened them with or what their policy is, there's always a staff member or more that will willingly go stand between a murderer with a rifle and these kids. And if they're willing to give up the last few seconds of their lives to buy these kids a few more minutes of life, as a community and as parents, we owe it to those staff members to, find out what they're comfortable with. Some want nothing to do with it. Some of them will want the trauma medical training. And then there's going to be a certain percentage that say simply, I want a chance of going home to my family at the end of the night, just like every other night. Give me every tool and every training that I can get. And that's how schools are implementing programs such as Faster Saves Lives, as one additional layer where if everything else they have in place has fallen apart, they still have that other option beyond simply sitting and waiting on outside help to arrive.
So from what I was told, there are some schools in Massachusetts, private schools, that are allowing their teachers the opportunity to carry. I don't know what specific training they have gotten, and I'm curious, have you actually branched into Massachusetts at all?
I would have to check. I do believe that we have had staff from Massachusetts come here. It has not been very many at this point, but thing is, I believe it is 31 or 32 states allow schools in some form or fashion to include firearms as part of their safety and security program. Some of them, such as I believe Delaware is another one, only allows the private schools, but not yet the public schools. But there are always options out there. In fact, even in the states where they're not options, we had a school in North Carolina last year send up 6 of their staff members who they cannot even authorize them to carry in the school at this point in time, but were being so proactive, they wanted to get ahead of the curve, to be ready, to be prepared, to have all the other benefits of the Faster Saves Lives program beyond the firearms. And state law allows them to store their firearms in their automobiles while they're at work, which the superintendent said that is the next best thing to us having them inside the school. It's not the best situation, but again, it still is better than waiting the 3, 5, 15, 30 minutes until outside help arrives. And I applaud schools like that are so forward thinking. They're willing to send staff, several hours away to get this training to improve the safety and security the best that they can at this point.
Right.
I know we're going to jump around a little because the nurse brain in me is just, I can't wait to get to the medic training or that type of intervention where we're helping kids not bleed to death, right? So I know Alice doesn't get into chest seals, tourniquets, that kind of thing. And Jim, when he missed the flight that day, we had a two-hour phone conversation, and something that he brought to light for me that I didn't really think about, that probably a lot of people don't, is you think you're going to call 911 and the ambulance is going to come. Well, the ambulance is not going to come into the school until the police deem it safe. And it is too late by then. These kids are too tiny. They have a very small amount of body mass and blood perfusion, and hypovolemia is a critical. So every second counts.
And that's exactly it. That's the tagline for our program: is time is all that matters. Ron Borish out of the SEAL Academy up in Ohio, Northern Ohio, coined the term the stopwatch of death. And what we've seen over all of these events over the years is every minute you allow the violence to continue, you're going to see on average 5 to 7 additional dead or injured. So it's a simple second grade math problem. How many minutes are you going to allow the violence to continue? Tells your community how many dead or injured staff and student you're willing to accept. And many schools now are saying, we've got to get that number as low as possible. Unfortunately, you can never guarantee it's going to be 0 because these killers always get the first shot. But we can reduce that as much as possible. And it really aggravated me when I first started working with schools 10 years ago on this. They had plans for every other emergency that you can imagine except for violence. And they would say, we're going to wait on outside help. And I'll tell them, you would be 100% negligent if you wrote a policy that said, if a kid falls in a swimming pool, our policy is to dial 911 and stand on the side of the pool. That would be negligent on the part of the school. You jump in the pool, you pull the kid out, all the staff are trained in CPR. And then when the professionals do get there, you have an actual patient to transfer to them instead of a victim. And violence has got to be the same way. Yep. The way that you save lives in these programs is once the violence starts, first you have to stop the killing as soon as possible. And sometimes that is simply such as we saw at Chardon High School here with Coach Frank Hall, somebody in authority confronting the killer and chasing them out of the building. Other times you have to have firearms to confront a lethal force situation. But when you've stopped the killing, that's only the first part. You've got to then immediately have the tools and training in the schools and equipment to stop the dying as soon as possible. Because these young kids, as you mentioned, with the small body mass and these horrific injuries, they can't wait 1 minute, 2 minutes, even 3 minutes, which was the response time that we saw at Sandy Hook Elementary School. We'll never get a faster response than we saw that morning. They had 3 officers in the parking lot in 3 minutes and 16 seconds, and we still lost 20 babies that day. That can't be acceptable to any school out there anymore.
Right. So how is there a grant for schools to get involved with FASTER, or
there is, yes. Our foundation has been able to offer grants for schools for about the past 7-8 years. We used to give it to any school that applied for it. Then I think it was around 2014, I had a school say, I've got 32 staff that I want you to train. And I said, that's 20% of my budget for the year. I can't put that into one school. So what we offer schools now is if it's their first year in the program, if they can get here to Ohio from any place in the United States, we'll basically train their first 5 staff at no cost. We issue grants for the first 5 staff for the new schools. Then so far, if they send people back for the next additional people the next year, or if they send them back for our level 2 or more advanced training programs, we have some other limited grants available for that also. So we don't ever want a school to sit there and look at their budget and say, do I put the safety and security of my kids first, or do I hire an English teacher? I mean, that is an absurd decision for school boards to have to make, but it's something they face every single year. And we're happy that we're able to help out as much as possible. It's all through private donations.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's not a gun issue. This is a school security issue.
That's right. And, the lives saved, we've been doing this for 10 years. We're in hundreds and hundreds of school districts. And over that period of time, you had mentioned the medical side of it. We've actually had 5 of our staff, which have called us back and told us that they have needed to use the trauma medical side of the training. And 2 of those were lives saved with tourniquet applications. So that's where we're already saving the lives. Fortunately, in the 10 years we've ran the program, there's only been 1 staff member that's ever had to draw his firearm as part of his day as a principal at a school. Situation ended with no shots fired. The kid gets to get the help that he obviously so badly needed. And we truly hope that that's the only use of that part of the program. But we like the fact that we're saving lives in other ways.
So how long do you think it would take to go through the program? Would you be able to break that down, what the curriculum is like?
Sure. We have it in several different sections. First thing is any staff that want to be want to attend the Faster Saves Lives program have to have their concealed carry license from the state they're in. Number one, that gets them some buy-in, gets them some basic gun safety training, and eventually it's going to be required for federal law to carry a firearm in the school safety zone. The second thing is, if the concealed carry is the only training they have, we have a one-day firearm specific foundations program that we run them through, simply because so many concealed carry classes, they have never drawn from a holster, they've never shot single hand, they've never shot offhand, very few do any reloads. So we get them these base foundational firearm skills, the modern thumb forward grip, how to operate the trigger from the pressure wall each time. Then when they get to the level 1 class, we can take them so much further if we're not at the base firearm skills. And our level 1 training is it's actually about 3.5 days, because we start them an hour early each day. We do working lunches every day. So it ends up being about 27 hours of training in our level 1 class. We start off simply with a couple hours discussing the history of these active killer events and how over the decades, police response has changed, and police, even though they're slow about it, have implemented different changes and policies and ways that they respond to these events. But unfortunately, it's just been recently that schools have actually made any change. I mean, you go as far back as Sandy Hook Elementary School, or even back to Columbine, and even in Sandy Hook, they had the doors that automatically locked. They had the single sign in. They had a psychiatrist right on staff. They were doing everything they could at that point in time that we need schools doing. But schools, unfortunately, have been really slow to adopt real changes to this. So we want the people who attend the Faster Saves Lives program to be the subject matter experts in their community. Law enforcement officers, unless they specifically seek out this type of training, they simply do not have this as part of their general curriculum. Most of their time is spent, how do I write reports? How do I testify in court? How do I drive cars at high speed? You know, that type of things.
Well, we saw that at Uvalde. How many years later from Sandy Hook? You think we would have improvement, but yet Uvalde happened and it was horrendous.
And that's exactly right. And, you know, it's what I tell school staff, you know, and why them selecting the right people is so important. You know, anytime you mention guns in schools, the one staff member you would never want to be a part of this program immediately jumps to mind. But as I said, there are ones that they know are going to do everything they can to keep these kids alive, and finding the ones with the right mindset already and the right heart set, more importantly, are how they have a key program on this. And, you know, they get it. Law enforcement is like every other career out there. You're going to have half the people above average and you're going to have half the people below average. But unfortunately, when you dial 911, you don't get to say, send me the hardest charging guy that you have got. I need them now. Right. You get whoever happens to show up. And that's the unfortunate reality. And especially even going back to Parkland, the school saw it there, and why they know nothing is 100%. If they get to choose the staff that are going to be responding, if they get to define what training they're going to have, and if they get to know what their qualification levels are, that takes a lot of unknowns out of it for the schools. And that's why they like choosing the staff, training the staff, setting their recurring training. Because again, you may get lucky and get that hard charging guy that comes in the school immediately, such as we saw at Nashville, and doesn't hesitate. Or you may be right back to Parkland or Uvalde, where you're getting somebody that shows up that just does not have the dedication to the community to go do what needs to be done.
Right. What would you say to someone like myself who wanted to kind of introduce that to a school? How would you approach? Because I
wish I had that magic bullet, actually. You know, that is a very common question. And when we first started, I really thought that this was going to have to be kind of a grassroots parent and teachers pushing up through administrators to get this implemented. Surprisingly, over the years, we have probably had more administrators who are doing the jobs of educating themselves. They're talking amongst their peers, and they are actually working to get good information on this. So, you know, I always joke, if you're the only person there, it's really hard, because you go in and meet with the school board and, you know, oh, it's that crazy gun lady again, you know, if you get a friend that comes in, they say, well, isn't that sweet? She's now found a friend, and, they can ignore you. And I tell people, by the time you get 3 people asking the same questions, holding them to the same accountability, it's hard to ignore 3 people. That's a committee. That is something that they have to pay attention to and at least give you answers, such as, do we have plans in place? Do we have the medical training in our school? What is our response time? Do our police train with us? Do we have staff? Even, there's just a recent survey out that stated something like 54% of the teachers they surveyed did not want to, or thought that having firearms would make them less safe. And, they put that as a majority. You look at the details, it was 54% plus or minus 7%. Which even my public school education math tells me that could be a majority the other way. But more importantly, exactly what we've seen with most schools is there was about 12 to 20% of the staff that said they wanted the opportunity to carry firearms. And those are the ones that you go to and you work with them and you help them decide what's going to work best for their community, their schools. And having local control is very important because we want that decision making made at the individual school board levels.
You just said something that kind of made me think about something. You said a committee.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have committees for each state regarding FASTER? So
we don't. Thank you so much for volunteering.
I'm kicking her under the desk going, you're giving us another project.
We are quite happy to work with anybody in any state that would like to. Jim Irvine, myself, have went to several states to testify in their legislature if we need to change the laws in their state. I believe Massachusetts is where you guys are based out of. Is that correct?
Yep.
As I said, does allow, with some limitations, schools to adopt this. So, we're happy to. One thing we've had great success with here in Ohio is going to their annual school board meetings. Indiana has an annual school safety convention, working booths there, doing breakout sessions. And, that's where they can approach you and kind of ask the questions that they may not be comfortable asking in a public school board meeting one, because they're like other people. They don't want to ask a question that may make them look uninformed. They may want to get some more information and get better educated. That's what we're happy with. We're happy to talk to anybody out there, answer their questions, hear their concerns. And I charge everybody, come up with the question that we have not been asked in 10 years so that we can go find the right people to answer that question and make the program even better.
I represent Rhode Island, so I would love to take this to the Rhode Island School Board. Rhode Island and Mass are very much the same in, certain
Yep.
things politically. So it's a challenge here for us.
It is. And, that's where just starting the conversations, the medical side is a good kind of soft first step in. Everybody likes anecdotes. We did a breakout session at the Buckeye Association of Superintendents here in Ohio. The superintendents have their own annual conference, and we went in, did a quick breakout session. Here's how you apply tourniquets, quickly. Here's what a chest seal, compression bandages, here's basic airway management. And one of the last things that we did was handed out some wound cards and, severe bleeding from the, left upper arm. The superintendents are in there applying tourniquets. They're high-fiving each other, they're all pumped up. And then right before we left, Jim Irvine, our foundation president, stood up and said, okay, now we've got to go to the next room because nobody stopped the killing. And you could watch the air go out of everybody in that room when they realized this nice, neat new skill that I think I have means absolutely nothing if they're still putting bodies on the ground in the next room. And it was very powerful to a lot of those because they realized that, you can't be a partial solution to this. You can do a lot of things, but there are also more that you can do if you're willing to look at it and do it in a safe and effective manner.
I was on the school council meeting for the past 2 years. And I had mentioned a couple times regarding the refuse to be a victim. But as soon as I said, which if they research it, they'll find out it's an NRA program. And that was it. It was like, it was like, break stuff. That's it. You're done.
Yeah, we went through something similar here in Ohio when we first announced this back in 2012. It was branded the Armed Teacher Training Program because that is red meat to good, sensible gun owning, illegal gun owning people like us. did not get as many invites into school board meetings with a name like that. So we stopped and kind of rebranded. The Faster Saves Lives works perfect with our motto that time is all that matters. You cannot even wait the 3 minutes that we waited at Sandy Hook unless you're simply saying 20 dead kids and 6 dead adults is acceptable. And I have yet to find a school board that would stand up and willing to say, I think 24 dead people are acceptable in ours. But that's all part of this program, is making them the subject matter experts as we go on through our 3-day initial program. Firearms are a large part of it, but the tactics are in there also. How do I, deal with large chaotic crowds? How do I move through crowds? How do I, work the corners and the angles to solve this problem from outside the room so I don't have to put myself into the room where the danger is? How do I move through these large crowds without firearms? The trauma medical is a huge part of it. And then we end up on the 3rd day with, force on force decision-making scenarios where we're actually putting them in stressful situations, letting them see how their bodies react in these stressful situations, and, coming up with plans. It's kind of neat because even on the 3rd day, a lot of staff are still unsure about this. Can they actually do this? Is this something that will work? Or heaven forbid, are they even going to make it worse? And it's kind of neat to see them as they go through the different evolutions, and you see the light bulb come on and they see, yes, if I follow the tactics and the training they've showed me, I can be successful in this and I can make the situation better and I'm no longer helpless. And that's really empowering to the staff because it spills over into so many other parts of their daily thing. Then the last thing that we do as part of our qualification for level 1 is we have all of the staff qualify to a level which exceeds what is required for law enforcement in the state wherever we're doing the training. Here in Ohio, law enforcement have to qualify once a year. They're allowed to miss 5 out of the 25 shots and still qualify as law enforcement. That's not acceptable for staff we're putting in our schools. So we take the same qualification, add 3 additional shooting while moving, and only allow the staff to miss 2 out of the 28. So, we hold them already to a level higher than what we hold law enforcement. And some schools take it even further beyond that. And that just shows their dedication to the students and staff that are in their districts.
Yeah.
I love it.
I can't even imagine, like you're talking about this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm a licensed carrier. If I were in a defensive dynamic situation, I'm probably going to be dealing with one bad guy and a small crowd. I can't even imagine the whole crazy chaotic situation in a school with, I can't even imagine. I can't.
It's overwhelming. And the neat thing is that most of the staff we have a checklist that we go through. It's an acronym that one of our very first level 2 classes, which is where they come back to after the first year, came up with ESNP. First thing you have to do is eliminate the threat or threats. The second thing you have to do is secure the area, firearms, and students. The third thing you have to do is notify the administration and the police to get the professionals moving. And then the very last thing that everybody wants to do first is then you can start providing the medical aid. And, that's tough for a lot of school staff because they care about these kids. They all have no problems eliminating the threats and solving the problems when they need solved. But then managing the rest of this, how do I secure the areas? Do I have administrators notified? Because nobody is coming to help until they know that you need help. You are on your own 100% for a certain period of time, no matter what. And then finally, providing the aid. If I'm the only one trained in the medical in my entire school, it is very overwhelming when you're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 injured people and trying to manage that. And that's why it's very eye-opening. We've seen several of them that think ahead of time. There's young kids in the scenario, send them out, of the hallway, and then suddenly they look around and it's like, there's nobody here to help. I would love to have a few more teachers that nothing else, they have the medical side of the training to get in here and help me out. And so, that's part of it. Said, if you guys would like to jump in a car and drive here to Ohio, we have our last level 1 starting tomorrow. We have spots.
I love it.
If I could, I would.
We're going to work it out. We're
Yeah.
going to work it out. I think it's important. I think the more we understand this program, the better we can advocate for it.
Right.
Exactly. And we realize that if there are good candidates, if we don't fill up the classes, I'm saying that because I think we still have 5 open spots in the class that we start tomorrow. Firsthand knowledge is very powerful because while it's one thing to go to a school board or have conversations among your peers and say, hey, you know, their shiny brochure says this. It's another thing to go back and say, listen, I learned this. I now have this skill. They taught me how to do this. I now understand that. That firsthand knowledge is very powerful to conveying why it is something that they have to look at and have to address. And you know, that is why I really like the Claire Davis Act that they enacted in Colorado, which simply says that schools they don't have to do anything specific, but they have to account for any foreseeable emergency, which I think in this day and age, we can say an active killer inside a school is a foreseeable emergency. So they can no longer simply say we're burying our head in the sand and we're not going to worry about this. They at least have to address it in some area, which is good. Some schools may say we're going to rely on outside help or we're going to hire private security or SROs, but some of them are saying, no, the staff are in the building, the staff are willing to do this. Let's use the resources that we already have on hand. And that's important. We just want them making good, informed decisions.
I love it. I love it, Joe. I wish we had more time, but we are running out of time. So thank you so much for giving us that breakdown and that introduction to Faster Saves Lives. It's such a fantastic program. And the more we talk about it, the more we spread the education and awareness, the better our communities will be.
And our kiddos.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
joining
much.
us.
Thank you
Awesome.
for educating people out there and helping us get the word out. That's so important.
Thank you for joining Sisters in Arms. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to email us at sistersinarms2022@gmail.com. Until next time,
Stay safe.
keep vigilant.
and keep vigilant.